Good evening. Welcome to a meeting of the Advisory Committee on Tuesday, February 2nd, 2021 at 6:30. And on our agenda this evening, we'll be speaking with our Council on Aging, our Library Department, and our Parks and Recreation. We were going to hear from our MIS department, but they have an emergency in another town that they have to deal with tonight, so we'll reschedule them. So with that, I would like to invite Lisa Dion and Penny Gherkin from our Council on Aging to present the budget. Before I share my,
You want us to introduce ourselves, Brian?
pardon me?
You want us to introduce ourselves?
Yeah, but what I was going to say is before I share my screen, why don't we do that? And you can give us just a little overview of what the department's been up to.
Okay. I'm Penny Gherkin. I'm chairman of the board. For most of you, not the new ones, but I've been around for a long time. In fact, I used to have Brian's job for 8 years. So it's not that, I don't understand budgets, and Lisa's the same way. We did this budget together. So you can ask either of us questions and we'll just pop in with what we have in front of us. So Lisa, why don't you
So I'm Lisa
yourself?
Dion. I'm the COA director. The past year has been, or nearly past year has been a challenge, like it has been for all of us. Since last March, both COA lines, so my desk phone as well as Heather's desk phone, all calls have been going to our personal cell phones. And that's 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. And it's really been nonstop. So we've not missed a call. And that's been really important to us because we do feel that the seniors in town and seniors overall are the ones that seem to be most impacted by this. And we've had to reinvent ourselves. We've been telling people for years to come to the senior center and get together and to make those connections. But now we're telling people to stay home, and we're trying to connect with them virtually. We have Zoom presentations. We had exercise classes 3 to 4 times a week at the town common through November, and they were extremely well attended. Now we have about 30 participants virtually that do a few classes a week via Zoom. We have a lot of Zoom programming, and we're doing drive-through events at the town common still in the winter. Heather and I will go out there and have certain giveaways just so that people can drive by and connect with us. We can find out what's going on with them. The newsletter has been huge for us too, the newer format, getting that email to more folks, getting it mailed out to more folks, keeping the lines of communication, using volunteers, collaborating with other town departments and other groups in town. It's really been amazing to see the outpouring of volunteers and help that we've received. And I think we're doing a good job.
And she's been working at this. Lisa supposedly works 24 hours a week. Well, that's just a joke. She works nowhere close to 24 hours. It's more 30 to 36. But on top of what she's been doing all years is she's now coordinating the COVID shots with the Board of Health. So she's signing everybody up, which is, I don't know about you, but between the two of us, we've had lots and lots of phone calls of seniors looking to get their shots, and we are going to be able to help them. But it's a huge time sink because you've got to sign them all up. And some of them, it's hard for them to go through all the information. So, she's really doing double duty. So I feel like, she gets gray hair, we have to offer to do something about it.
So what I'd like to do is share the budget on my screen so that we can go through it line by line. And I did want to just make one note. So one of the members of advisory, Bill Nichols, actually serves as treasurer for the Friends of the Bolton Seniors, which does partner both on programs and also, I think, financially with the Council on Aging.
Yes.
And so he is going to recuse himself from voting on this budget. We just wanted everybody to understand that was going to happen.
Yeah, and just so you know, Friends of Bolton Seniors was originally started when we originally started it. It was because the Council on Aging cannot raise money for projects and events. And that is the job of what we call FOBs, the Friends of the Bolton Seniors. They raise the funds, and then they, use the funds to help us pay for oil for our seniors, but also to sponsor programs and that kind of thing.
Okay, so I think you all should be able to see that.
You make the spreadsheet slightly larger, Brian?
Yeah,
Okay, fantastic.
is that better?
Yeah,
The major increase is this in both the salary and the wages. Is salary is just another, Lisa goes up a step and then the COLA is put in there. So that's the increase.
Mhm.
It's solely step and COLA. The wages, the van drivers have disappeared because I don't know if you remember last year at town meeting. Because the state basically reimburses our transportation company for the wages and the gasoline for the van that we use. It's literally like a revolving fund. And for years we had it in the budget and we raised and appropriated something like $10,000 when literally we send a bill on Monday and they pay it, 2 weeks later. So it absolutely made no sense to raise and appropriate. So we had an article that took those van drivers' wages as well as the gasoline, which has been zeroed out, and put it in a article, and it now goes into a revolving fund. So we never have to deal with it anymore.
Pandy, we own the vans and service them?
No,
No.
no,
Okay.
we basically lease them, Heather, Lisa.
Yeah, it's all the services come from the state. It's a
Oh,
state-funded
okay.
program.
So we don't pay the lease. It's all done by the Commonwealth.
Correct.
Right,
Thank you.
Sure.
but we literally pay the drivers, but then we bill the state for it.
Right,
It's
right.
just a pass through.
Yep, got it.
The difference with the wages is that Heather Goodsoe has been working for us for 5, 6,
Probably about, 4 or 5 years.
yeah. And her job has evolved over time from an activities coordinator to an activities and outreach coordinator. And then when the old or the past director left, she took on much more responsibility and the responsibilities were shifted around. And so we went to Dawn and Kristen and said, her job is now totally different from what it was originally planned on. She was
Let me just-
literally had a flat rate.
Penny,
like
let me just interrupt and explain. So when you say Dawn and Kristen, you mean our town administrator and
Sorry,
our
our
HR,
down and the
our
treasurer
HR director.
and our HR director / treasurer. And so we gave them the reasons we thought that she should go on to the step formula. That she should go on to step 1, level 1 to start with. And they agreed. They both wholeheartedly agreed that she, deserves to be an employee of the town. She works 30 hours a week. And so we asked to put her there, and the difference here just reflects the change from when she was making a flat fee to what she was making as the new step, the first step, as well as the COLA. Does that make sense to people?
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay,
Lisa, why don't you take these?
Okay, so we look at purchase of services, that's the same. In software support, there was an increase there, and that is because we added some options to our My Senior Center software, which has been critical to use during the pandemic. So that increase, it was $100 for a handheld device that we actually got paid for through a grant. But we have to continue to support that with our software, and that's $100 a year. And then we have something called Voice Connect Premium, which allows us to place almost like a robo-type call to either certain groups in town or all seniors in town to let them know about different events or important alerts. And that's $300 a year. So that's the addition to that.
And it also comes through as Council on Aging, which makes a huge difference, because I don't know about, Anna knows, seniors let's look at their phone and they don't answer the phone.
Right. If
So-
we didn't have the premium Voice Connect, it would have shown a number in Cambridge. And we started with that and people weren't picking up the phone. They weren't getting our messages. So any other, I don't know if there's any other questions regarding that, because I know it is an increase, but the
So
building,
that's all contained in the software support line.
I'm sorry?
It's all included in software support,
That,
yeah.
that is all included. I was just sort of letting you know why it went from 790 to 1190.
No,
I had-
that's fine. It just wasn't clear to me that that was bundled with software support.
Yeah, that's
And
all in there.
I had a quick question about, Lisa, you mentioned Zoom programs. Do you use the
Yes.
town's license or does the Council on Aging have its own license?
We use the towns.
Okay.
So what's covered in the contractual purchase services?
So we pay for programs, exercise classes, our yoga classes, painting class. If we were to do bus trips and things like that, those are the sort of things that we take from there.
Okay, thanks.
Sure. So the
Building
building,
lease, yeah, go talk about the change in the
no.
building lease.
so the building lease, it's going to stay like this through September 30th, 2022. We're paying $360 a month at this point.
Okay.
And before it had been going up in significant increases. So
Right.
when we budgeted it originally, it was a little higher, but now that we've got the new lease that goes for a year and a half,
Right.
it dropped down. So that's the decrease.
And just the telephone, the company TPX, the contract with the town of Bolton, it needs to be renegotiated, I believe. And after doing a little research, I was told that it would be approximately a 10% increase. So we bumped that up a bit. Cable is, there's always an increase there.
Yeah, I think we
So,
put in 5% for cable.
yeah. And then for supplies, we decrease that a bit. And so basically that's supplies, an instance would be, so getting luncheons in, getting the weekly sort of food supply in when the senior center is open. Right now, supplies we're having a drive-through event, so we would want to put goodie bags together and things like that. And we've been lucky to have a lot of donations, but we try to do themed drive-through events, and that's coming from our supplies budget right now. But in the future, we're hoping the center will be open, and it can be the drive-throughs, plus hopefully we get some people in here as well.
And I think also Heather uses it for some of her activities. She's doing baskets with something, she'll buy it through the supplies line.
Absolutely. Yep.
I see I have a question from Omid.
Sure.
Yeah, about the supplies.
Yeah.
Say like this vaccination goes on, like we do better and everything else, and you guys are able to open the building.
Yeah.
Don't you still need a lot of cleaning supplies because the risk hasn't gone away, and because we're dealing with the seniors? Don't you guys need more cleaning and all those kind of supplies that will add to the cost that wasn't there before?
Yes,
So,
actually,
like,
that's a great point. And so what we would do at that point is I would get the hand sanitizer, masks, gloves, different things that we might need, and then bill that through, work with Ninochka, and bill that through the CARES Act. And we would get, Ninochka, I think that's 75% reimbursed.
So we have put in for a ton of PPE money, and we're still waiting to hear back if we got it. So everything would go through the public safety building as far as ordering and coordination. And then we should be all set for the year for Lisa to reach out to Jeff and say, okay, I need hand sanitizer, I need cleaning supplies. So it should all be covered under the CARES Act.
And some
Okay.
of the building will be covered by the landlord.
Yes.
Okay, I'll just.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, no,
Good
that was a great question. And I guess that is one of the benefits of renting the space too, because our cap management has put hand sanitizer everywhere in this building, everywhere. Okay, and then the gasoline is also, well, that's in the revolving fund as well.
Okay, so the total request for FY22 is $93,300. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen just so that people can ask more questions and see each other's faces if they have questions.
I had one question. It's not important, but I noticed that line one from the bottom had a triangle in the corner of it, the 17,000 number. I can't remember what it,
Triangle?
yeah,
I don't know why it had a triangle.
it's actually more of a question for Brian.
That's a subtotal, the 17,000.
Yeah, I think so that I'm working off of a spreadsheet that Nanachka created, and I think the reason it's giving that little caution symbol is because we backed out the gasoline this year, so it's like a slight inconsistency from the way the formula had been. But I did add up those numbers without the gasoline, and they do sum to 17,250.
That's fine.
Any other questions for Lisa or Penny?
Question.
Yeah.
I don't know if it goes to you guys or not, but has like Mass reached out to you guys for about vaccination, to use a location for like all the seniors in town to distribute the vaccines or anything else? Or do we have to like worry about that as well if they do?
Well, the way it's working now is the Neshoba Board of Health and Lisa are scheduling vaccinations at Fort Devens. And so Lisa, between that number of people, we're calling seniors, or the seniors in fact are calling us, because once the word got out that there were vaccinations, they jumped on the bandwagon very quickly. So we're basically scheduling Wednesdays between 10 and 2. Those are the hours we've been given. And they will tell us exactly how many people Lisa can schedule. And we have an ongoing list of anyone calling up. And I'm also calling seniors who haven't called us to let them know that they're available and that, you know, they may have to wait a month because it's not a huge group that go each time. But eventually we'll get everybody covered.
And the Council on Aging is also helping folks, you know, if they don't want to participate in the vaccine clinic at Devens, we are helping them sign up and search for other clinics and other options. And for the folks that are going to Devens or anywhere, the Council on Aging is saying that, you know, we'll take you in the MART van. It will be free of charge. We want to make this vaccination process as easy and accessible for folks as we possibly can. We're excited to be at this point, quite frankly. So we'll do anything to get people a vaccination.
But the reality is Lisa is swamped. But she won't admit it.
Glad to hear that at this point. Not always.
But it's worth it.
Yeah, definitely.
And believe me, going to Devens is a lot nicer than going to Gillette Stadium.
So is there a motion to approve the budget as submitted at $93,300?
I'll make that
Motion.
motion.
I
Brian.
second it.
Okay, I'll do a roll call. Ahmed,
Aye.
Bob,
Aye.
Ann,
Aye.
Craig,
Aye.
and I'm a yes, and Bill is an abstention. Okay, thank you both so much. And
Well, thank
Lisa, thank you for that. Well, please thank Heather as well, because I know
Oh,
that the
yes.
two of you have done a ton this year.
Well, it's been an interesting year, but I'm happy to say that I really think people are getting what they need in town, and I'm thrilled about that. So
Thank
thank
So are
you.
we. So are we, Lisa.
Thank
job. You and
Thank you.
Penny are a dynamic duo.
you. Thank you.
Take care.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
All right.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
Okay. Next up, we will be hearing from our library trustees and our library director. And it looks like everybody is here. It would be great if you could all introduce yourselves, but also, is there anybody that needs to share their screen at all?
This is Bob. Hi, Brian.
Hi.
I don't think so. I had sent you a document.
Yep.
If everybody has a copy of that document, then there's no need to share. Otherwise, I'm happy to post it from my computer.
I can share that when the time comes, and I
Okay.
can also share a copy of the budget.
Okay,
When
great.
that-
Thank you.
So actually, well, I'll turn it over to you if you want to
Okay.
just introduce everyone and
Sure. So I'm Bob Zach. I'm the chair of the Library Trustees, and online we have Kelly Collins, our longtime library director, as well as Pam Sikansky, co-trustee, and I believe we also have Tricia Neron online, who's also a trustee. And I want to thank you guys for your time in going over the budget for the FY22 library next
Okay.
year. I just want to start out by saying, usually we have a section in this presentation where we go over sort of the highlights from the previous year. And as I'm sure you're finding out, the highlights from the last year were all around COVID-19, probably across the state and across the world. For the library, we've actually been due in great part to the terrific work by the director and our staff, have been highly successful in keeping the library going, circulating material, despite the fact that we've been closed to the public from a building perspective since May, if I'm correct. Is that right, Kelly? In any case, the material that I shared with you, Brian, sort of speaks to, and I'll let you pull that up if you want to.
Yeah.
One of the key things that we did was we switched to curbside pickup for material, and this happened in the June timeframe. So what I'm showing here, thanks to the library staff for pulling this together, is a graph of the 2020 circulation up in the top left versus the 2019 circulation. The 2020 is in the green and the 2019 is in the dark blue. And you can see, almost immediately, sort of as the news of the pandemic began to spread, that we started to see a dip in our circulation. But that as we introduced in the June timeframe, this curbside pickup of physical material, that dip went away, and we're actually now beginning to approach the same levels of circulation that we had in 2019. And I really chalk this up to both the dedication of the staff, who's done a great job preparing the material, including even curating materials that you can sort of have someone browse for you, etc. The other thing that is interesting to know, just in terms of those following the technical trends here, in these next two bar graphs, you can see that we have seen sort of continue to see sort of an uptick in the number of electronic material purchased. It went from 12% purchased but checked out, went from 12% in 2019 to 22% in 2020. And that is, I think, partially reflective of the availability of the e-material during the crisis and not having to go to the library to pick it up. But it also represents, sort of shows how important, our physical materials and access, to those physical materials maintains to our, applies to our patrons. One of the things, interesting thing down there in just the bar chart is you can see that although the fraction of electronic materials went up slightly, you can see that we're still, sort of circulating a lot of physical items. So that's basically, the success story we've had of the library is this, sort of remote curbside pickup in terms of enabling things to go on. Other things that have driven by staff creativity, a list of curated online resources for people to check on, proxy browsing, as I mentioned before. We had our first ever socially distanced summer reading program. The staff has assembled grab and go craft kits, and really, I think, have succeeded in doing this by doing this and keeping our patrons engaged, which is great. However, despite that, despite the success here, we really are looking forward, as I'm sure we all are, to the being able to open the library back up to the public as soon as it's safe and with low risk to what we're doing now. So one of the factors, just so you guys are aware, that we're considering in our monthly, sort of meetings to determine, sort of a possible reopening plan, is just the success we've had in circulating material. And the risk that opening too early, sort of poses to that success. So, for example, if we were to open early and sort of one of the staff, God forbid, were to become ill, sort of we would end up, sort of closing the facility, in order to keep the virus away, which would have the double whammy of both impacting our staff, which is a prime concern, as well as impacting the circulation and the service of the library. So those are the types of things that we're weighing as we're considering reopening. Are there any questions? I wanted to make sure that you guys had this data in front of you. I know that most of the patrons that we talked to are excited to be able to access, sort of this material during the pandemic. There have been a couple who've expressed frustration of not being able to get physically in the library, and I just wanted to make it clear to everyone on this call that we take those concerns very seriously, but we are, sort of weighing them against the safety of our staff, our patrons, as well as the operation of the library itself.
This is Ann. How
Yeah.
are other libraries handling it? Are these protocols across the system, or are different libraries approaching things differently?
I think the core is the same. I think some of our libraries have tried, sort of reopening to the public earlier than we have, I think. And what we found in most of those cases, they've ended up closing, and afterwards. And that was another thing that again, sort of we reflected on, which is, sort of what's the additional value of being able to be in the library. Kelly, maybe you can clarify, are there other things that we're not doing? I think the library community has been pretty uniform in innovations here.
Very, very much so. No, I think you covered it.
Okay. Thank you, Anne.
Thank you. I was just curious, and I watch the library all the time, so I was.
Yeah. Well, hopefully you'll be able to watch it.
I see Director Kelly coming in every morning and leaving.
Yeah.
So would it be helpful for me to share the budget so we can just
Sure. Let's get into the budget. So I believe this is the latest budget that includes the post-COLA adjustments, right, Brian?
Yeah. Yes.
Right, great. I just want to make it clear that we did follow the guidance given to us, which was a level funded budget pre-COLA, which is obscured by the current budget. So I want to just point that out. After COLA, obviously the cost of the staffing has increased somewhat, and the books and materials as a percentage of the total budget has also gone up. So those are the two changes relative to the preliminary budget that we proposed.
And the books and materials is keyed on state requirements, correct?
Yes, although to be fair, we're a little bit above the minimum state requirements, and we're sort of below the recommended state requirements for a library our size. So we've been operating in that same, sort of netherworld between 19% and 16% at 17.5%.
Yep. Since there are a number of new folks on advisory, I thought it would be helpful to just go line by line, and without like giving names, but just numbers of employees would be helpful to know, and how many full-time, part-time, all that stuff.
Okay. Maybe we can go to if we want to start on the wages tab, we can go to that.
So unfortunately, I don't have
oh, you don't have that version.
Yeah.
Okay, hold on just a second while I.
Okay, we have, I work 40 hours a week. I'm the director. We have 2 people who work 35 hours a week and 1 who works 20. And the other 5 work part-time, which is less than 20 hours a week.
Got it. Okay. That's really all I needed to know, Bob. You don't
Okay,
need
all right, good. Thank you, Kelly.
So that's all of that. Thank you, Kelly. That's all captured in the salary and wages figures right here.
That's correct.
Okay. And then, so I think this is if we can just kind of go through each one of these lines with some highlights about what's covered in each of them.
Sure. So the purchase of services is primarily our subscription cost to the library network. And the number here, which is up slightly from last year, represents the actual assessment that we anticipate in the coming fiscal year 2022. I believe the next one is professional development, and you see that we've reduced that. Our overall thinking in this year's budget is, in order to achieve level funding, we basically have cut wherever we can, and informed by our operation during the pandemic. So you'll see that professional development, which is sort of remote classes and travel to remote classes for employee professional development, has been cut, so that we can focus those efforts on online, which are less expensive. Also, you'll see later, but just telegraphing some of the work we have around in-person programs, we've reduced the funding for that, as well as travel and meeting, drastically reduced the funding for that. So we can move on to the next one, which is heat and electricity. These are for keeping the building sort of warm and lit. The electricity we're projecting up this year, and that's a reflection of the actual of now history we have with electricity bills from our electrical provider. The heat is also reflects a long-term average now that we have sort of in the building, and both of those are up. We're projecting. I believe, Kelly, for the last couple of years, we've had to go to advisory sometime in May in order to request transfers to cover the cost of the utilities.
The electric bill especially.
The electric
yeah.
bill especially, yeah. The other thing I just want to point out is that as part of our COVID regime here, we have been working with Randy and Mike on the DPW team to see if we can tune the HVAC system. And Mike has been a great help on that. We've actually installed MERV 13, which are sort of hospital ready filters in our main HVAC loop, which actually filters out virus particles. We do, and we've also checked to make sure that the amount of air exchange that we have with the outside air, sort of is maximized, so that we we're not recirculating a lot of dead air. And unfortunately, I expect that both of those, sort of actions, which are absolutely the right thing to do in order to combat the pandemic, will hurt as opposed to help our electricity and heating costs. So I think it's prudent to increase them based on history at this point. Repairs.
That's the copier contract,
Thank you.
copier rental and maintenance contract.
Right, and just for those new to the advisory, the way that our copier works is we do charge for copies, and any money that we get from the copier is returned to the general fund and doesn't appear in the budget as a credit, although we do see the cost of the copier here. We have a nominal item here for repairs and maintenance of the building. These are covering small expenditures for small items. The bulk of the building repair and maintenance costs are covered in the DPW budget. We continue to use software support, especially for scheduling resources. I will say that this year we haven't been doing as much scheduling of the program room as we'd like, but we anticipate being able to do that at some point in FY22, and maintaining that software seems prudent at this time. The web services are our library portal, which have been key to communicating sort of our status and services to our patrons. The telephone budget is up $100 this year, and that reflects the actuals now that we've been tracking for the IP-based telephone system now for for several years since it was installed. Postage is postage, nominal. Most of the stuff that we're doing these days is via email, but we still have to mail things occasionally. Supplies are related to the books and materials, basically preparing materials for circulation. And then the books and materials budget with the COLA things, COLA adjustments is up slightly year on year. And this covers all of the physical and the electronic material that we circulate. And we've, per the earlier system, the state has guidelines for libraries of various sizes as to how much of the total, what fraction of the total budget should be spent and needs to be spent in order to maintain certification on books and materials, which is sort of the core mission of the library. And as I mentioned before, the lower end of that, in order to remain accredited by the state and part of the network, is 16%. The recommended for library of our size in our community is 19%. And for the last several years, we've been splitting the difference at 17.5%, which is what you see reflected in this 79,755 number. Miscellaneous and programs. These are programs that we run for children, for teens, for adults. You can see that we've drastically reduced the amount for that, basically planning on cutting down the number of in-person programs for the coming fiscal year. The other thing we've also cut out on is, as I mentioned earlier, is travel and meeting time. Basically, travel and meeting budget, we've basically zeroed that out. We have no capital outlay. And I think that summarizes the budget.
Can I ask a question for Ninotchka and for all of you? Can we just remove the capital outlay line? Because at least as long as I've been on advisory, it's always, if you've had a capital request, it's always come through the capital process rather than in your operating budget. Is there a reason we've had it in there?
I can remove it, no big deal.
I've got a question.
Yep.
Did you reduce those last two lines or the miscellaneous and programs and travel and meeting lines solely to try to stay level funded, or is that the direction the library is going anyway?
Yeah, good question.
Try to stay level funded.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, basically, when we looked at the budget, sort of, we have a number of items. Although we spend a lot, 17% on books and materials, most of the budget is staffing. And with the step increases in staffing, sort of that the overall budget has a tendency to go up. As in figuring out how to do level funding this year, sort of we started by cutting out, sort of items like the ones that you just mentioned, just because those are discretionary after all. And we cut those first, but that leaves, sort of significant money, which we had to take out of either staffing or out of the books and material. And our thinking on that was that, sort of during the pandemic, especially, and although we hope we get to be open soon, there's a possibility or likelihood that that we won't be completely, sort of open to the public for a fraction of the coming fiscal year. And yet, sort of we're, to those graphs earlier, we're continuing to see a large demand for sort of circulation. What we did was that we kept the books and material budget relatively constant, and we cut hours actually out of the staffing. In the past, that has been a big struggle, and I anticipate will continue to be a big struggle, just because the staffing that we hire, that we have, basically covers maintaining a safe environment for staff and patrons, sort of in the library building when it's open. So in the past, we've had to struggle with sort of reducing staffing, which reduces the number of hours the library can be open, which reduces the opportunity people have to check out material. But the way that we decided to go during the so-called pandemic budget was to recognize that that we're, without being since we're not open to the public right now, that the right thing to do is to preserve the books and material budget. But obviously, sort of as we look forward, hopefully, sort of we'll be able to get some of that funding back. But if we don't, we're looking at hard trade-offs between, sort of hours open for the library and books and materials.
Yeah, and I certainly appreciate the efforts to keep costs down, but some of these things, especially the program, seems to get at the heart of what we have the library for.
Yes, right, exactly.
And
I will say, yeah, I just to clarify on that as well. We are fortunate to have a lively friends group. The friends group, sort of donates a lot of time and in some cases material and funding to our budget. And in the past, we've leaned on them more to help fund some of these programs. We also have a discretionary fund that we receive from the state that is granted directly to the trustees, and that's another source of potential income for these library programs. But yes, we're very key on keeping those.
If your program's line were $2,000 instead of $1,000, would that make a significant difference to the programs you could offer?
I think in a normal year, yes. Sort of in this coming year, it's hard to predict, sort of the difference between 1,000 and 2,000, which is why we cut it this year.
It may be a crazy assumption, but let's assume that in FY22, at least for most of the year, we're back to normal.
Yeah. Yeah, then we have a budget which we operate to, and sort of we'll be sort of looking at sort of what the staffing looks like and what the books and materials looks like, and sort of what the town funding scenario looks like. But that's just the reality of the level budget.
Well, I'd be in favor of increasing that to 2,000.
Motion that. I mean, the saving is so nominal, but if it's putting a pressure, why not just provide them? Because all the funds that they have cut, it's in the same area. It's not like it's been spread throughout different programs. They're all like professional development, falls within travel and meeting and miscellaneous and programs. They're all same area of the program. And the total saving is $3,250.
If I could just raise one point, we did ask everybody to level fund their budgets. So by increasing one department, are other departments going to come back and ask for increases as well?
Okay, I understand.
Along those lines, I assume that miscellaneous and programs, travel and meeting, both of those actuals are probably close to zero for fiscal year 2021 at this point, and will be turned back or used for heat or electricity or what have you.
Sam, I
yeah, go ahead.
think that overall, a good budget. There's always the option to come back. I know they have strong support from the friends and donors. So my sense is trying to jack this up, and even a nominal amount when all the other departments are being, starved for resources is not really the right thing to do in this environment.
I will say that certainly, sort of we recognize, sort of the fiscal environment that we're in, sort of, and do not want to be seen as not doing our part to maintain the finances of the town.
I guess one difference I've noticed is that other departments are level funded. I haven't seen a lot of reductions yet. I mean, we haven't gone through the whole budget yet.
Well, I'm hoping you see level funded, which is the bottom line ends up being the same, which if the other departments have, sort of step increases in staffing costs, I can't imagine something else isn't being cut. But you guys get to see that.
Yeah, we get to see that. But I do think this is a really responsible approach. We have had conversations with the library trustees at various times to provide additional funding when it was necessary. I think right now trying to have a somewhat more robust environment budget in this environment is not really the right thing to do.
And also, I think, sort of coming out of the pandemic, sort of there will be, sort of less uncertainty. We'll be able to answer with more certainty, sort of what the impact of some of these cuts are. And that will make it easier for us and for you and for the public to sort of understand what the options are. So I'm in favor of that.
Yeah, I'll just throw in my 2 cents, which is that I agree with Anne and Ninotchka for a few reasons. I mean, I think Kelly and the trustees know how much I love the library. I'm a huge personal user of the library, but because of the level funding request that we've made to all of the departments, combined with the fact that we're still waiting on our school numbers, I do think it's really important for us to continue to try to stick as close to the level funding plan, because that is the only way we're going to get to town meeting with a budget that doesn't require an override, I think.
Although I will say, I think this is the first time I've argued against someone increasing our budget. I don't plan on making a habit of it.
Well, I have to say, when I came to the committee and asked for $80,000, I was so worried that we wouldn't get it. So I think we're well funded for the time being in this environment.
Yep, I agree.
It was a horrible meeting.
Were there other questions on the budget? I have just a couple forward-looking things just to you guys apprised of some of the stuff going on that I can conclude with, but I don't want to detract from the budget discussion.
No, go ahead.
So we have been looking at a couple of things just to put on your mental roadmaps. We have a long-term issue with our downstairs women's room, which has a habit of backing up and spreading sewage in the floor. We've been working closely with Randy on that. We have a priority this year to diagnose that problem and to figure out how to repair it. Unfortunately, the most likely suspect is a drainage pipe encased in concrete. So it's going to be a big project, and we'll keep you posted on that. We'd obviously be looking on creative ways to get funding for that. The other thing that I mentioned just in passing was the HVAC system. Ideally, we'd like to find a way to improve the air quality in the pandemic-aware world within the library without increasing the amount that we pay on utilities. And we have been looking at some technologies for doing that. And as soon as it looks like we have a handle on that, we may have a capital option, in future years to do a retrofit of the HVAC system to try and reduce our role in spreading illness.
Bob, can I ask whether Randy has also spoken to you and the rest of the trustees and to Kelly Collins about the paver project? Because when he came before us a couple weeks ago, he said that he was exploring some, I think he said, like, creative ways to address that issue, but that there might have been, he'd want you to weigh in on an aesthetic issue. So
yeah, we've definitely had. So first of all, I want to say, sort of welcome Randy. Sort of we've had a meeting with Randy, sort of going over a page's worth of items on our list, and Randy is immediately engaged and clearly working on those. I think one of the things that we're encouraged is I believe that he's working on a sort of a ticket program to allow us to keep track of all of the interaction between the DPW and the library, which would be a great thing, just because he has a complicated job and Kelly has a complicated job. On the pavers especially, sort of we've looked at that in the past. Sort of replacing them outright is prohibitively expensive, at least from earlier estimates. Randy had indicated that he's sort of working on some alternatives for us. I haven't seen any of those alternatives presented, but obviously we would take a hard look at those.
Bob, I had that conversation with Randy as well, and of course, all I could think of was hard top layered upon layers, so we lost our front steps.
Yeah.
And, he said that there are a variety of treatments that can be done that may be hard top base, but they have various designs and imprints on them.
Hmm,
And I went and looked it up, and they're
Okay.
there.
Good.
So I think we'll have some interesting, alternatives, and we really need to, look at them and make sure that whatever gets installed is consistent with the look and feel of the library.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
And I was so fast on the internet, you would have been.
Okay, so I think that's all I had today.
Thank you all very much. Okay, so the total request was $455,745. Is there a motion to approve the library budget as submitted?
I motion that.
I'll second.
Okay, great. All right, so roll call. Omid,
Aye.
Bob,
Aye.
Anne,
Aye.
Bill,
Aye.
Craig,
Aye.
and Brian is a yes as well. All right, so that was unanimous. Thank you all so much. And thank you, Kelly, and your staff for everything you do.
Good job.
Thank you.
And thank you very much for the time spent and the interest in going over our budget. And perhaps we'll see you in person in the library at some future time.
I hope so.
Yeah, me too. Thank you.
Bye, good night.
Bye.
All right, so I see that our Parks and Recreation representatives have joined us. At least I see Ed Sterling's name. And then it looks like somebody from Bolton Parks and Rec has joined as well. I don't know if, can you hear us?
You bet.
Oh, hi. I don't see anybody in the Bolton Parks and Rec box. Is
So
there somebody
Lisa
that-
seems to be there, but not on film,
Oh, okay.
not on
great.
camera.
Lisa, we can't hear you.
Let's see. Looks like she just changed something.
There's a mic that sometimes is on mute when you set it up. So if you can find the mic and it's got a slash through it.
Oh,
hit
yeah,
it.
or maybe did you join with computer audio when you logged on?
I'm just sending a message to her. I know she's there. She just replied to a chat.
And thank you for coming a little bit early. I know that we,
That's fine.
I need to step away for a moment.
sure,
I'll be back.
okay. The other thing is if, I don't know, Lisa, if you can hear me, you might try just calling in on a phone for the audio portion. I can put the number in the chat. Hold on a second.
So
So-
it's Sheppel, Shepple, Sugar Hotel, Echo, Peter, Larry, Echo.
What was that, Ed?
Thank you. I needed. Spelling of Sheppel.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Ed. You bet.
Ed, while you're here, were the commissioners the ones who put together the budget, or was it you and Lisa, or how did?
Pretty much Lisa and I, quite frankly, based on last year's, and then nice with Lisa is now, an employee and can go to the treasurer and Ninotchka and, go over details, things like that. Obviously pretty disappointing year, almost no events came off as they normally would. So expenditures were down. I think we returned $7,400. to the general fund. I think porta potty expenses were the one thing that was over just because the state required daily cleaning. And even there, we weren't sure if we were getting that service done, but that at least was the contract with the supplier called Cove. And we double checked with the Board of Health, and apparently porta potties are supposed to be cleaned on a daily basis.
If I wanna-
So-
You can hear me. But look, it's-
Oh, we can hear you now.
Okay, good, thanks. All right, let me work on video. Is that video working? Nope, that's computer. I mean, that's like.
Well, since we do have a few new members of advisory, I thought it would be great if you could just both introduce yourselves. Why don't we start with Ed?
Sure. Ed Sterling, over on Still River Road. I guess Town Hall Junkie, Concom 93, Selectmen 96, Long Range Planning Committee 99 to 2000, New Police Station Committee 2000, Parks and Rec 2002 to 04, I think it was. Founder of Bolton Access Television back in 2005. And then kind of got talked into coming back to Parks and Rec one more time by Laura Roberts. It has changed quite a lot. I have to tell you, I had no idea what I was getting into, to be quite frank. It's gotten a lot more complicated than it used to be.
Thank you for stepping up.
Sure. Deeply involved in Boy Scouts too. So you probably see me around town with different conservation affairs that possibly involve the Cub Scouts or the Boy Scouts.
And Lisa,
Yes,
do you want to introduce yourself as well?
yep, I'm on Butternut Lane. I've lived here for about 19 years. I just started with Park and Rec Coordinator a few months ago, probably in October. I've been volunteering on many places, baseball, PACS, Lawrence Sawyer School. What else did I do? Baseball, soccer. I was still involved with soccer actually. And a lot of town events.
Well, thank you for serving, and thanks for being here tonight. If you don't mind, what I'll do is I'm going to share the budget that we have, and if we could just kind of walk through line by line to see what's covered.
You bet.
Okay.
Do you see that?
Yes,
Yep.
thanks. Okay.
Okay.
So we had Ally Webb as our coordinator, and unfortunately, when COVID hit, it hit her family deeply in the employment issue, and her husband lost her job. She had to find a new full-time position, and we then discovered Lisa, a wonderful replacement, and so extremely pleased with how quickly Lisa's been able to come on board and help us. It's been a joy. It's been very good. And a very welcome position. Again, having been on Parks and Rec in 2002 to 4, that was a very sleepy committee. Woke up for Easter candy and then woke up and maybe 4th of July or Halloween and Christmas, and everybody went back to sleep. It was a very quiet board. Now there's so much more involved, a lot of sports management at this point. The porta potties is a big deal too, from a health standpoint, and involvement in the swimming lessons and the lifeguarding. So it's quite a different committee than what I was used to, and it really is useful to have someone at town hall to answer a lot of questions and coordinate with the rest of the staff. So I'm very grateful for that position to have been approved. So we have lifeguards, of course. Linda Herbison, a former Parks and Rec member, is the manager of the swim program. Again, because of COVID, the individual swimming lessons were not done this year. Again, just out of concern of proximity. And so we did have, of course, swimming. The beach was properly laid out. We carefully monitored the number of people coming in. We did our best to restrict it to Bolton residents and put up a lot of signage to that effect. We didn't seem to have any issues that I'm aware of. People were properly spread out, and to the best of my knowledge, there were no incidents at all. So it was a successful swimming program as usual. So that was good. Purchase services, I believe that's again a predominance of porta potties. We normally would have a couple. We would have one at the town beach. We, I believe, have one at Persons Park. We had several at Memorial Field. We have one at Forbush Field, and we had one at Town Common. And again, the new requirement to clean them on a daily basis, we tried to trim back some of those, and I think took one away from the Town Common for most of the summer. Again, just trying to save money on that account. We go with a company called Cove, which seems to be pretty popular. And as far as I know, we didn't have any complaints. It did appear that they cleaned them on a regular basis. I don't know if it was a daily basis or not. We'll have to see. Electricity is your lights, particularly at Memorial Field, basketball court. We get, I think, something like 5 different electric bills on a pole by pole basis. We also have one, I believe, at Pond Park, a meter that we pay for. So those are the different electrical lights around the different parks that we have. I think Town Common as well. We get a bill for that. Equipment. I'm I'm coming up short on that one. Lisa, can you help me on that?
Yeah, I think that wasn't that the top coating for Murphy Court?
Yeah, that's true. We had Murphy Court basketball redone. I guess that's where that went. Again, purchase services is more of the porta potties. I think this was basketball related. Generally, we really don't buy much tangible stuff, to be quite frank. It's pretty limited. A few very small purchases at the Town Common, extension cords, light bulbs, timers, and so on, like for Christmas time. And that's about it. The Christmas ornaments, for example, have been given to us by Cabela's. They're big, oversized ornaments, and so that's what we've been using. So we've been trying to keep those kinds of purchases at an absolute minimum. Supplies, I believe, would be normally things like, little candy and Easter eggs, decorations, and so on for the holidays. So we typically had done an Easter egg hunt. We had typically done a Halloween parade back by the schools. We do buy some candy. We normally had like a little festival inside Emerson Gym. Again, none of that happened this year. And of course, we have the town bonfire, which again also didn't happen this year. And so a lot of, a fair amount of stuff was returned just because it didn't happen. So there we go. So what do we got? 44, 578. And I think in my annual report from last year, we returned 7,400, if I'm not mistaken. But of course, it's kind of funny. It's the calendar versus the fiscal.
Yeah.
So let's see, this year we're asking for 44, 578, if I'm correct.
Yep. I wanted to give everybody else an opportunity to ask any questions about the budget.
Why is there a new electric charge?
Maybe because the lights, the Christmas lights. Oh, no, that was
You mean
Jenny.
5211?
Yeah, Jenny
that's
used
good.
to.
All right.
So those used to be in the town hall budget, so we're
Okay.
just reclassing those to the Parks and Recs budget.
All right.
Okay.
So really nothing new. We formed a small subcommittee trying to engage some new interested citizens. We have 3 volunteers who've shown up to fill 2 positions. Laura Roberts, the chairman, resigned mid-year due to job requirements. She's very involved in overseas travel, but of course that changed. So her job has just become a little more complicated there. And Lauren Silly, one of our current members, is not going to renew her membership and doesn't want to run again. So I have 2 openings, and I will propose 3 nominations at Town Caucus. So I'm glad that we have some very interested volunteers to fill their shoes.
I had a question for you, Ed.
Indeed.
So earlier this evening, we met with the Council on Aging, and then we met with the library, and both of those departments have sort of, I guess I would say, nonprofit affiliates. There's like the Friends of the Bolton Seniors, there's the Friends of the Bolton Library. And I know that in the past, there have been some people who have been interested in making donations to Parks and Rec, but I just don't, I'm not up to speed on like, if somebody wanted to do that, is there a way to do it? And maybe Ninotchka's maybe she knows.
Okay.
There is a Parks and Rec gift account. They could just give it to probably Lisa, and she would turn over the money to the town.
Right. We don't do any overt fundraising. One of the changes last year at the town meeting was the creation of a revolving fund. That had to do with this outside group called Triple Play, a baseball organization that uses our field. And there had been certainly concern by Don Lowe that the Bolton baseball had been charging this outside group a fee to use essentially town land, which is illegal. And so we still supported Triple Play. We still supported Bolton Youth Baseball in terms of their expenses and so on, but with the understanding that the money has to come to Parks and Rec. And by having the revolving fund, it does allow us to have some accumulation of funds for maybe something like playground equipment that's not involved in the routine sports or swimming programs. Because really haven't put any money in any kind of playground equipment in years.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions?
Yeah, if I recall correctly, near the end of last year, there was a special appropriation for a new timer and cabinet and things at the basketball field or basketball court.
Yes.
Yeah, that's for the lights.
Yeah, did that get paid for by or through the DPW or through Parks and Rec? I can't recall.
I honestly don't know that one, to tell you the truth. One of the sad things that happened was it was vandalized very badly. We believe out-of-towners were coming quite late at night. They wanted to play till 2 in the morning. They vandalized the timer equipment to a point of unusability. We literally had to shut the whole basketball court down this year because of COVID. And then the lighting situation resulted in there were complaints by the neighbors that, again, these kids were playing until 2 in the morning, apparently, by breaking the timer. So it's essentially shut off at the moment. We've dealt with Pete Casello, the electrician, on our fire department too, to try to have something less expensive as an alternative in a lockbox. I think the problem was the electrical equipment with the timer was too accessible, and he's come up with an idea of maybe sort of another armored box, and possibly even putting it higher up so it can't be so easily just jimmied and broken into. So it's a real problem for us at the moment. But at the moment, basketball is really not allowed under COVID, and so until that opens up, the basketball hoops themselves have actually been taken away by DPW, and then we'll have to revisit where we are on an electrical timer for the lights, again, to satisfy the neighbors that basketball isn't being played beyond 10 p.m. at night.
So that could be something in the equipment purchase, since it wasn't spent last year.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions? Are there any motions to approve for $44,578?
I move we approve for $44,578. Is that the right number?
44,578, yep.
I second that.
Okay, and roll call, Omid,
Aye.
Bob,
Aye.
Bill,
Aye.
Ann,
Aye.
Craig,
Aye.
and I'm a yes as well. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ed and Lisa.
Just as a postscript, under COVID, the town common pavilion has become virtually the only meeting place in town and has been very heavily used, very heavily scheduled. And so we're grateful, of course, that we have that resource. As well, I've come to learn that the landscaping being done at the town common is being done at no cost to the town by Emerald Acres. I am working on a vegetation management plan with Concom. I don't know where that's going because some of the landscaping, I guess, is not quite what Concom is looking for in terms of fertilizers and herbicides. So we'll have to find out what the impact is. But again, we're trying to save that money and retain Emerald Acres help with the town, the pro bono landscaping that we get. Now, I've understood that to be about a $5,000 value to the town.
Ed, when did that relationship start?
It goes back to the creation of the town common. Apparently it was arranged by Dan Gaffney and Bob Romer and Terry Boots, the owner. And he apparently agreed that he would use his company to offer that service, and it's continued through the transition to the town.
Got it. Sorry, can somebody mute? I hear.
Can you, my wife is trying to,
Oh, sorry.
yeah, I'm sorry. Please, if you could hold on for a second. Yeah, all right, thank you. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, don't worry about it. I was just gonna say, if whoever's taking minutes for tonight's meeting, if you could just note what Ed was just talking about with the vegetation management and Concom, because we might just want to ask Concom about that too when we meet
Right.
with them.
So again, the company was called Emerald Acres.
Yep.
And the Bolton resident is Terry Boots, B-O-O-T-S.
Great. Thank you, Ed. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right. Have a great night.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Okay, thanks, you too.
All right, so the only other things I wanted to do before we sign off, we can approve the minutes that were circulated, which looked great. And then if people feel prepared to kind of circle back and vote on the veterans budget, because I know Jenny sent the email that we had gotten from our veterans agent. I don't know if people, let me put it this way. If somebody wants to make a motion to revisit that, I would definitely entertain it, but I also don't feel like we have to do it tonight. So it's totally up to you guys. But would somebody want to make a motion to approve the minutes as submitted?
I'll move we approve the minutes as submitted.
Okay, I'll do a roll call. Omid?
Aye.
Yep. Bob?
Hi.
Bill?
Aye.
Ann?
Hi,
Craig?
Aye.
And I'm a yes as well.
Brian, do we need to second that motion?
Oh, you know what? Sorry, I thought somebody did, but yeah, Ann, do you want to
I
second
will
it?
post.
Okay, sorry about that.
I move we
Getting
revisit-
better at Robert's rules.
I move we revisit the veterans budget.
Okay, you know what? I am just gonna try to pull it open.
I second that.
Okay.
Am I crazy or I thought conservation was tonight, no? That was
No,
on my
they're-
original schedule. Did that get changed?
Yeah, I think Jenny had to reschedule them because I think there was a conflict.
Yeah, Rebecca had a meeting tonight, a conservation meeting tonight.
Hi, Jenny.
Hello, sorry, I've been lurking.
Lurker in chief. All right, hold on a second. Boy, I'm glad I didn't talk about you. All right. So we're looking at this budget right here. So was there any discussion? I know, Bob, you had asked the question about what was covered under the veterans benefits line.
Yeah, I think the email that Jenny forwarded answered the question.
Okay. All right, so is there a motion to approve for $40,433?
I move we approve for $40,433.
Just a quick question. I'm a veteran. Should I not vote on this?
No, no, you're fine.
All right, just making
Because-
sure, you know,
yeah.
for the whole ethics and everything else. Because I benefit out of this. So,
Well, maybe in 20 years you shouldn't vote on it.
Yeah.
okay.
I'll second Craig's motion.
Great. All right, so let's do a roll call. Omid,
Aye.
Craig,
Aye.
Bob,
Aye.
Phil,
Aye.
Ann,
Aye.
and I'm a yes as well. All right, I'm not going to do a roll call on a motion to adjourn. So does somebody want to
Brian,
make a oh, go ahead,
Can I,
Bob.
can I ask a question?
Yeah.
The interpretation of level funding. So in the, in the library discussion, they've interpreted that to mean try to keep the bottom line the same as last year. It seems like every other department we've talked to so far interprets that to mean you get a free pass with COLA and step increases and keep all of your other requests the same that you had last year. Now, maybe that's because we've only been partially through the budget and most of those are essential services. But even Parks and Rec, for example, that we just talked to, had like a 1% increase in wages. And there's no attempt to offset that with things like equipment or supply purchases, even though Ed says we don't really buy much of anything. So it seems like there's a little inconsistency on what we really mean by level funding.
The library did not reduce their expenses to capture their wages, though.
But I thought that's what Bob was trying to explain, is that they had an increase in wages, so they're making cuts elsewhere to try to offset that.
No.
No, so, and that's
Their
That's
budget
why
went
he
up
made the-
$7,000.
that's why he made the comment at the beginning of how when they were working off of their budget and level funded, it was before we added the COLA and stuff like that. And
Right.
so they basically tried to do what I think other departments did as well, which is sort of aside from any COLAs or steps, try to level fund, and that's also what they did. Right, Ninotchka? I mean, that was your understanding as well.
Yeah, that's why I was a little surprised that they did say, we hope other departments are reducing their expenses to match their wages, because that's not, nobody's done that, including
Right.
library. So I
Right.
mean, I could see at the beginning when you didn't have any COLAs, but the steps always were in there. So there was.
Right. So their increases were in heat, electricity, telephone services, and a slight increase in books. But it seems like other departments have just taken those increases and said, well, I've got to make my request for 22 equal to what I've actually been spending in 21. So it's just an increase. And we've just been letting it slide. And again, maybe it's because there's not a lot of room in the budgets we've discussed up to this point, because they're mostly essential services.
Yeah, I mean, I think Council on Aging was like that whole software support thing. I don't think that we could have asked them to, the only way that they could have met that $400 would have been if they reduced their wages somehow, right? So I think that
They did level fund their expenses,
right.
which I think maybe that's when we say level fund budget. Obviously you can't do anything about wages.
Right. So, what about electricity and heat increases? We've seen a few examples of that.
Yeah, and we saw library electricity and heat went up as well.
Right. And it seems like the library was the only department that tried to offset that by cutting services.
Well,
Is
Council on
that-
Aging cut their supply line to make up for, they did cut 2 of their lines to make up for some of their other increases.
So I guess my question is that what we're expecting departments to do, is to cut wherever they can to offset increases because of, electricity costs, heating costs, and those sorts of things?
This year, yeah.
Okay.
I think generally that's every year when we say level fund budget, we're speaking about expenses only.
Right, so the bottom line expenses, like, you know, I mean, again, so, you know, public safety building, for example, had a 47% increase in heating, electricity bill went up 2%. And again, maybe it's because, okay, there's really no room for them to cut anything.
Right, and I think also for the most part, the departments that we have seen, like fire, police, DPW, there is very little discretion in terms of staffing.
Yeah.
But I think that if this were, again, we still don't have our school numbers,
Yeah,
but this might have been a year where we would ask people to reduce staff levels in order to make the budget. And I don't think we've gotten to that point yet, but I think this would be a year where that would have to be on the table.
okay, all right. Good.
It's a shame that we get the school numbers so late, because it really does, you know, we kind of, it's 65% of our budget and we don't know what it is until March 15th. So it's tricky.
Yeah, I mean, we're at the point where the budget is essentially bare bones. I mean, it's essential stuff almost across the board.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really does give a sense that the rest of the budget is pretty well managed, I think.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I understood that correctly.
No, thank you for asking. Any other questions? All right. Thank you for your time. See you next Tuesday.
Alrighty,
Craig, do you want to make a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
And
Second,
all right, all in favor, you can just raise your hand. All right, good night, everybody. Thank you. Bye,
Thank you
Nanachka.
all.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Bye.